And we're live.
Hello, and welcome to the Modern Romantic Podcast, where we celebrate romanticism through passionate people doing incredible things. Hi, I'm keeping the memories of you safe inside my heart. Hi, I'm Trey, and I'm joined by my co host, Emily. Hi, Emily.
Hi. I do not have anything quite that awesome to compare with that, so I apologize. I was gonna say that I'm a hitman based on this book, this like number one best-selling book of Jenny and Bob's, but no, thank you for ruining it. I'm
You're
so
welcome.
sorry. What a great intro. Let me start over. Hi, I'm Emily, and I hope that you had a chance to dance in a field of daisies today.
Oh, I like that.
Thank you. You're so mean. So
I'm so
mean.
rude.
You're so rude.
And wouldn't you know it, I woke up at 3 a.m. this morning. So there's that.
Did you?
Uh,
Wow.
I really did. Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later. But we have some incredible people that we've been chatting backstage with who are honestly keeping me in stitches. They are fantastic. Emily, would you do the honor of introducing our fantastic guests this evening?
Absolutely. We have a writing duo, people you may have heard about. We have Bob Mayer and Jenny Crusie, authors, New York best-selling, New York Times best-selling authors. I'll get it right. Welcome to the show, you guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, we're
Thanks for
thrilled.
having us.
Absolutely.
That's what Bob looks like when he's thrilled.
So one thing that really intrigued me right off the bat, as we were reading your biographies, Jenny, you in particular had a line in there that I would like to ask you kind of right off the bat, because I have a very concerned boyfriend upstairs who read that and went, "I've got to know." You were about to write a dissertation on the ways in which men and women tell stories.
Yes.
And my very concerned boyfriend wants to know, what are the differences between the ways men and women
Yes.
tell story?
So this only lasts an hour, right?
Um,
Ask me about my dissertation. I can, basically. It shifts. Okay, well, I was writing that in the 1980s.
Hmm.
So gender roles have changed dramatically. But I actually still think it's true because when I started writing with Bob, the same thing happened. And it's basically, I was doing a lot of research in the way they actually men and women tell stories when they're speaking. You get home and say, what happened this day? And the other person gives the story of the day.
Hmm.
And the classic one was, she says, what happened today? And he says, oh, I ran into John. He's getting married. And she says, and? And he says, and what? And she said, well, who's he marrying? Is she nice? Where's the wedding? When's the wedding going to be? What do they want? How long were they together? What
details, yeah.
details? And he says, no, you don't understand. He met her and they're getting married. And that's what happened when Bob and I started writing, in that Bob is a very clear thinker. And when he thinks up a story, or when he did back when we met, he would say, here's the beginning and there's the end. And that's where I'm going, that end. And he would write straight to it. And I don't write in chronological order. I think, oh, this is cool. And I told him the best example I could give was the two of us standing at the edge of a field,
Okay.
tied together.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, at the other end of that field is a post, and that's where we're going. And he starts out striding toward it. And I go, oh, look, there's a butterfly. And I drag him off the plane and collect the butterfly. And then we take another 2 steps and I say, oh, look, there's a flower. And I go get the flower. So what would be a straight line is a zigzag all the way across. But because we're tied together, we actually get across the field. Without him, I never get out of the field.
Okay.
I'm just collecting details. And with me, he gets a lot of details. I don't know whether he wanted them, but he gets them. So the two of us balance each other. And that was pretty much what a lot of my dissertation was on. It was obviously a little more complicated than that because they accepted.
Right.
the proposal. But it was funny how much the two of us played out exactly what happened.
Right. So, Bob, would you agree with this?
I think when we started out, it was like that.
Yeah.
Now it's actually reversed, I think. She's constantly emailing me going, what happens next? And I'm like, I have no idea, because I've changed my writing style. I used to have
Yeah.
outlines and, all sorts of things. And now I think I'm just a intuitive writer. I go with stream of consciousness. I trust my instincts after 30 some odd years that I'm planting things in the stories for a reason. I may not consciously know why, but they're there for a reason. And then later on, I got to figure out the reason. She keeps asking me, what's the reason? And I'm like, I don't know yet. It'll come to us. But I think that's true of men and women. I mean, my wife constantly, I'm always like, lead with the headline. She starts telling a story and I'm getting like, yes. And what is the punchline here? Tell me the headline and then you can fill it. And that just doesn't work. That is a profound difference between men and women.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would agree with that for sure.
When we first started writing, I remember he said, so I have these spreadsheets. This is how I plot. He said, how do you plot? I said, I make big collages, and I glue pictures and words, and that way I can. And I realized later he makes spreadsheets because he needs to see the details. He would literally put all the details in the spreadsheet so he knew everything. And I make collages because I can get the details, but until I see them put together in one big picture, I can't see the whole of the story. So we were working on that way back then. But he's right. We both moved toward the middle.
Yeah. I don't do details well. I always joke that if, and it's true, my wife wants to hide something from me in the fridge. She just has to put it behind something. Do anything. I mean, she gets so frustrated with me sometimes, like, don't you remember with this or that? I'm like, now she's gotten to the point where she says, like today, go get the rake. It's in the garage on the left wall, the specific rate, and it's just like, sometimes I'm like, what, do you think I'm stupid? She's like, no, I know you're going to come back and go, I can't find the rake.
That's funny.
Go
ahead, Trey. Sorry.
Actually, I forgot where I was going to go. I started my statement and then I completely forgot. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So I imagine that the people that follow you and the people that know you and your writing may already know this, but Bob, you have quite a cool and interesting history with your military career. Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, I grew up in New York City, in the Bronx, and I went to West Point, 4 years there. Then I went into the infantry, and from the infantry, I volunteered for special forces. So I did that for a number of years in the active duty and reserves. I started writing actually living in South Korea. Nothing else to do there except study martial arts. I put the military in a lot of my writing because, the infamous write what you know. I'm a big believer in that. And sometimes it's a little dangerous that you know it too well. You can get bogged down in the details. So I think everybody does that. I started out in military thrillers. I still write them. Mine are a little different than other people's and thrillers. I've written pretty much every genre: science fiction, romance with Jenny, historical fiction, nonfiction. People don't know what to expect. What's his next book going to be? Who knows? It's whatever I feel like writing, pretty much.
Besides actual content, do you think your experience at West Point and beyond has helped your writing, or at least your approach to it? Or
it gives you focus. I mean, the writing I did in the military was not a PhD. It was I wrote the Gettysburg Staff Walk, how did Battle of Gettysburg evolve. I used to write operations orders, deploying 15 Special Forces 18 to different places around the world, forward operating base procedures, all sorts of things. So it does make you understand. You have to explain things to people, not go for the lowest common denominator, but you got to make sure they really understand what you're talking about. And one of the things we did a lot in Special Forces was called intent. Why are we doing this? Not just this is what we need to do, but we would explain to them, this is why you need to do it, because that allows you to innovate if you explain why.
Yeah.
And I think that's in and of itself like a really good part of adult learning, which is explaining that why behind something. Kind of goes back to your dissertation, Jenny, where if you just give the headlines of things, that might grab their attention, but then they're looking for a little bit of those details behind it, and they're looking for the what's in it for me, the
Yes.
why behind it. Why should I care? And
Well, actually, on dissertations, not so much. Everybody knows you're just writing it to get out. But yeah, when you're writing anything to teach anybody somebody, you have to say, okay, this is what's behind it. This is the effect of it. This is why you should do this or shouldn't do this. Here's the theory. So in that way, we're the same.
very much so.
And Jenny is
Sorry,
oh
barged in.
not. I'm sorry, Trey. Were you done? I apologize.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Jenny, and then your history was you were a teacher. I think her video froze.
Or is she frozen?
Her,
I think she froze.
okay. Well, we'll give her a minute to come back. We've got a few people in the chat with some questions too, so we can maybe ask a couple of
Okay.
those. Oh, she's back.
Yeah. Well, my screen froze, so I didn't know
Yeah.
what.
No, we were talking about you.
That's
Pretty.
good. That's good. I needed the attention.
It froze for us too, so we had the same experience.
Good. I was afraid.
So you were a teacher,
Yes.
and then what happened after that?
Bob? No, I was an art teacher for like 10 years. My first
Awesome.
degree was in art, which shows up a lot in, and then I went back for my master's degree in English and taught English for 5 years, high school English. And then I decided I wanted a PhD. I had all the work for my MFA done. I have 2 masters. And I went back for the PhD, and the head of the writing department stopped me in the hall and said, "I hear you're published." He was this big guy, like a marathon man, the cowboy. And I was kind of cowering before him, and I said, "I'm published by Harlequin," expecting him to spit on me. And he said, "I don't care who you're published by. You should be in the MFA program." So he dragged me out of the PhD program and into the MFA program. And the first day I was convinced that I'd get stoned because I'm a romance writer writing for Harlequin. And he stood up in front of the class. This was Lee K. Abbott, great teacher. He said, "Anybody who makes fun of romance is making fun of Jane Austen. And anybody who makes fun of Jane Austen answers to me." And everybody went, okay. I adored that man. I mean, he was great and a great teacher too. So even though I was already published, he really taught me to write. And then I went on to take other classes. But after that, I was just a romance writer. I just wrote. It was great. I didn't have to put on pantyhose. Hell, I didn't have to put on clothes. It was great.
What a wonderful thing to say, though. I like that line. If anybody has a problem with romance, and now you're talking about Jane Austen, which is interesting because I bet a lot of people don't think about it that way.
Well, romance has been, and it's part of the, I'll get on a hobby horse here. It's part of the whole thing. Anything women do is not as good as, we're going to pay teachers less, we're going to pay nurses less, and so on. And the romance genre is the most popular romance in the world. It makes a ton of money for publishers, which they use to support other genres because, it's just us little women sitting at home making stuff up. So I can get hostile about that, but I won't.
Well,
and another good thing about Bob, by the way, is he has never felt that way. He has never once patronized me because I wrote romance.
Other things, but not that.
Yeah. There's a lot of other things, but I'm grateful he's not, sneering at me because of romance.
I mean, I think romance, and I will admit that I've been fairly victim to that too. Like, I'd look at the cover of a romance novel and kind of just cock my head to the side for 1 second. Never picked it up, never opened it. So I think it's one of those cases of you can judge a book by its cover. But to write a really effective romance, like going back to Jane Austen for a second, writing a really good romance can be so page turning. And in the way that you write your characters and in the way that they develop that romance with each other, that I think it can dispel a lot of those preconceived ideas of things. So I will admit, I I understand. I have had prejudices against romance novels before, but I will persevere in the promoting of romance novels.
That's good because my next suggestion for us as a project was going to be to write a romance novel together.
Okay, when do we start? What are the characters' names? How do they fall in love? What's the plot line? What's the through line?
Well, what? You can start your spreadsheet and I will start my collage.
Okay, I like this plan.
I'm just kidding. So, what do you. Jenny is
I,
frozen again. Oh no. Um,
future Emily, edit this part out.
I will. I guess we'll give her a moment again. And so you guys have been writing together on and off for a while, and
Yep.
um, one of your better of your better selling books. What do you think it is about you guys in your writing that makes such a great bestseller?
Because I think we bring a lot of experience, um, especially these new books. I mean, we got over 60 years of publishing experience. I've written over 80 books. Jen's written 40 to 50 books. Um, we instinctively know what's right. I think the other thing is we compromise on everything. We will fight about things, but then eventually one of us would back off and say, yeah, you're right, or whatever. And we can tell when someone really, really wants something. Plus, we get a lot of feedback. Somebody will say, well, I gave this book to my husband to read because he never reads. He doesn't like romance or this, that. And you've got all the action and you've got all the manly man stuff, which like an Agnes and a Hitman, he was a hitman. I wrote the sequel to that called Phoebe and Shane and the Hit Woman, where I flipped the characters and made the woman the hit person. But I think it's a lot of action. I bring a lot of action. I've read, sometimes I'll look at what Jenny writes and I'm like, yeah, and is anything going to happen here? Or are we just, going to have these two people sitting in the ether chatting with each other? So now she does that to me a lot. She'll say to me, Bob, your characters are just standing around talking. And I'll be kind of looking going, you're telling me this, but she's right. I mean, I tend to do that a lot more. We have flipped a lot of things. We had our last book came out, I think, in 2009, 2010. So we've had over a decade since the last book. And when we hit Lavender's Blue, Rest in Pink, and One in Vermilion comes out tomorrow, we wrote those three books in less than a year, and it flew because we just were back and forth, back and forth, back with the characters. Once we set the characters, which we're doing now for the next series, the plots just grow. They grow out of the characters and the setting. All people say they really like Bernie, the town that these first books are set in. They're really going to like the next series, Rocky Start, because Jenny doesn't like it, but I pitch it as the movie Red, set in a small town in the Appalachian Mountains, where a bunch of retired spies and assassins and all sorts live there. And we're having a lot of fun with that and the characters.
Yeah.
I think that's been one of the things of like the collaboration. There's been a lot of things that Emily does now that I've started to pick up on. And I
Yeah.
think there are things that I used to do that Emily kind of picks up on. So we are starting to like balance each other out quite a bit.
We
We
hope.
do have a we do have a question from Alien Girl on YouTube asking that she just started reading romance again after a multi-year break. Um, do you feel like fans still want the marriage proposal by the end of the book or a series, or do you think that's changed?
You have to get the One in Vermilion tomorrow because the characters. This is also different. We have a 3 book arc. Three previous books were standalones. You could read any of them. There were no crossover in setting or character. But these 3 books are the same 2 characters, which for a romance, Jenny that's what she has a hard time with. There has to be steps in the romance, and we answer that question at the end of One in Vermilion. And we're really interested to see what people say. I don't want to give a spoiler, but I don't think it's going to be quite your traditional happily ever after experience that people expect, because the characters are very different. You got to give what's real for the characters. And our two characters are not the type that are going to, well, I don't want to say much more about that because I'll give it away. But we actually do think we will go back to these books, to Bernie, to Liz Danger and Vance Cooper, and have more books. So that gives you an idea where their romance stands at the end of the book.
Okay. It sounds like it's a great day to be an Australian in Australia because it's a day ahead there and the book is
Yeah.
out.
I did the Romance Writers Conference in Australia, God, 2012, I think it was, a long time ago.
Yeah, it's so the Lucky Ducks in Australia can so Margaret in the chat, I have a question for you. I just want to know if you've read it all yet. You can answer that if you'd like.
What made Bob and Jenny first begin writing together? We literally got off the same plane. I was teaching at the Maui Writers Conference for a number of years, and I think my third, fourth year there, we literally got off the same plane together. She was up in first class, of course. I was in the cargo bay. Then they scheduled us to teach next door to each other, and I would go into her classroom before she would start, and I'd say, "Okay, Jenny and I decided to switch today," and she would panic because she's a teacher with all her course notes. And then one day she said, "Well, you'd be interested in writing together. I want to write a book about a food critic," and I said, "I want to write a book about a hitman." And we ended up with Don't Look Down, which was our first book together. And it worked pretty well. We were in traditional publishing then. And then Agnes and the Hitman, which most people really, really like. Oh, she's back. Here she is. And I just told them how we started writing together in Maui, what we agreed on. And then we did the third book. And then since we were in traditional publishing, the numbers were what the publisher wanted. And we each went our separate ways. And then she sent me a partial of Lavender's Blue, and I really liked Liz Danger. And we took that and we ran with it.
I sent it to him and said, "Please save me. I can't get to the end of this." I hadn't finished a book in over 10 years. Started a lot of them, but couldn't finish. And he charged in like a Green Beret and made the book so much better. His take on Vince was so much better than mine.
That is really a cool balance you guys have.
Well, I think we're older and wiser. We're seasoned. That's the word I'm looking for. We're seasoned.
Well, we also don't ever want to do what we did before. I don't want to fight like that again, ever.
No. Well, but I think our life, Jenny just moved. My life's a lot more stable than it was 10 years ago, so that helps a lot.
Sure.
Yeah. I'm sitting in with a bunch of boxes right here, and my Wi-Fi goes in and out because I just moved here and haven't mastered it yet. So,
do you find that your new ideas come, like, how do I ask this? I guess I'm thinking, like, when you get an idea for a new story or a new book, where does that typically come from? Are you both inspired by similar things then, or are you both very different when it comes to that?
Do you want to talk?
No, you go ahead. I've been talking.
That's correct. I've been gone. Well, with Liz Danger, I started that 12 years ago. I have no idea where I got the idea now. I don't have a long-term memory here. But once Bob came in, I told him I wanted a trilogy because the problem with writing romance is you've only got 100,000 words, and it takes a long time to convince people that this is a mature relationship that's going to last. So I said, we can do 3 mysteries, but I'm going to arc the romance over all 3 books. So we did Liz Danger, and then we plotted. I had the titles, I think. I don't remember what, but we plotted the rest of it together. But the inspiration for those books came up from what we'd already set up in the first one. And then we've just started a new trilogy, and Bob came in and said, "I want to do this." And I thought, cool idea. Let's do that. So I don't know where. Oh, we both like the movie Red. So while this isn't like the movie Red, it is about older spies and the one we're working on now. And we'll do a trilogy on that too. So whatever we set up in this one will inspire the next 2. And then we'll do something else. Generally, I remember when we were starting Agnes, he said, who do you want to write about? And I said, I want to write about a food writer because I have a cousin who was food editor for the LA Times. I figured I could go to him for everything. He said, I said, well, you want to write about? And he said, a hitman. And I thought, a hitman and a food writer. This is going to, but it's actually good that they're that far apart because there's a tension in that. I did call Russ at one point, my cousin, Russ Parsons, and I said, okay, we're writing this book and there's a food writer and somebody's coming to kill her. Why would that be? And he said, Jenny, we don't do that. So
We don't kill people, Jenny.
we don't kill people. We're nice. We eat. We feed people. So, but that was basically a lot of it is he picks a guy and I pick a girl. And we kind of go from there. Whatever you want to write about.
Do you ever put yourselves to some degree in those characters?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think, but you change it.
Sure.
Once you start
Oh,
getting
yeah.
deeper into the character and you know their background, they're different than you are. They have to be different.
Right.
Of
And they're in
course.
different situations in there. But I just remember when we were writing Lavender, we were just about finished with it. And remember you emailed me and said we shouldn't put by Bob Mayer and Jennifer Crusie on the front. We should as played by Bob Mayer and Jennifer Crusie. Because we channeled so much of who we were into it. And I think when you write, you do that. You don't always write who you are, but I think your values infuse the characters because you want them to be likable and you want them to be honest. And so you're not going to write somebody who betrays your values or you
Sure.
wouldn't have lunch with, basically.
That and is there some kind of, I'm sorry, Trey. Is there some kind of vulnerability with giving away too much that might be of yourself? So like I'm just I'm just guessing like I don't want this character to be too much like me cuz then people will know too much about me. No?
You really can't because you have to be honest on the page. I remember my first book, which was a million years ago. The heroine was having my midlife crisis. She was in her 30s, she was worried about her body, she was doing all the stuff I was. So in the next book, I thought this heroine is not going to have she's going to be confident, it's going to be fine. And I wrote the book and it came out and I read it and the hero was having my midlife crisis. I mean, your ideas and your obsessions seep in anyway if you're being honest on the page.
Okay.
Bob, you want to disagree?
I always joke that people are always, well, what happens if my mother reads the book? And I'm like, first, you got to write the book, then you got to get published, then she has to read the book, and then she has to recognize herself in the book if you put her in there, and she won't recognize herself because people. So a lot of times, we worry too much about that. You just write what's real. Your character has to feel real, and the readers have to empathize with your character.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I have a mother reading story if you want it.
Oh, please. Yes.
Mother said she had read every one of my books, every word. And then I was invited home to my hometown of Wapakoneta to speak to a local group. And one of the women in the group didn't want me to speak because there's oral sex in my books. And my mother found out that she didn't want me to speak and she was so upset. And she said, why wouldn't she want you there? And I said, because there's oral sex in my books. And my mother said, there's oral sex in your book. Yes, she'd read every word.
You got her. Wow.
Oh.
What a way to give yourself away, Mom.
Oh. See, now
maybe she just didn't understand.
Oh, please.
I'm sorry. I would not assume that your mother wouldn't understand that. I didn't mean
I don't even think about that.
I was trying to give her the benefit of the doubt.
No. She's just, her pants were on fire. There was nothing else she could do.
I love the concept of like you write what's honest to the page and honest to the characters. Like we were just watching, my boyfriend and I were rewatching the Star Wars Next Generation, the series from the 90s. And we hit an episode where there's a captain in there who is such a stark difference from Captain Picard. And that entire episode, I just kept saying, I don't like this guy. I don't like this guy. I don't like this guy. I want him to get yeeted out into space. Like he
Yeah.
was so unlikable. But then I had that realization about halfway in of the character is meant to be a betrayal to the original values that we've been set up for by Picard and what we've grown to love of Picard. So I think it was a great writing ploy to go, these are two foils, both very like we know who these people are in our real life, but we also know what our values are and can speak to that. So it can be used to such great storytelling.
But you have to be careful of the expectation. What was kneecapping you in the beginning was that you didn't expect that. And while that's good in a way, because you do want reversals as you go through,
Mm-hmm.
if they have presented it so that you feel you were supposed to like that guy and you can't, that throws you out of the story. So you have to give the reader clues. Not necessarily this person is scum, but maybe don't trust this person. Don't there's something a little wrong here. And it can be just little tiny things. But you do have to set that up. And it's particularly important in romance because you have something called the romance contract, which is fairly soon in a romance, the reader needs to know who the guy is and who the girl is, because that's the romance they're going to root for. And if you have two different love interests, which seems like such a good idea, conflict, what's going to happen is the reader's going to choose one of them. And when the romance gets to the end and that's not the one the heroine chooses, there's going to be a major disconnect, and readers get really upset about that. I did that once, so I can tell you, don't do that.
Do you have any other shared movie favorites that might be inspiring for new work? Or just inspiring both of you? Do you share other movies besides Red?
I don't think we have.
I used westerns in our books that she's never
I've,
seen. Shane, The Searchers, High Noon comes into
I've
play.
never seen
We
any
actually
of them.
cover that in the books where
Yeah.
I think in One in Vermilion, there's a scene where Vince is thinking, I don't want to tell her about this movie because then I'm going to have to watch one of her movies.
Yeah.
He's just not in the mood for it that day.
He hasn't watched the old romantic comedies, and I
Yeah.
haven't watched the old westerns, but we actually put that in there for that. There have been things that from our partnership that we put in there. In One in Vermilion, one of the less admired characters says, you know what, we need to do this on a whiteboard, which is what I do he makes fun of me for the whiteboard all the time. So he stuck that in there, and I actually did the same thing for him for something else, but we don't need to talk about that. But every now and then, yes, there's some context inside the books where you can go, oh yeah, they weren't getting along there.
You both have mentioned before how you kind of adopted elements of each other's writing. Are you in a place where you could maybe like phantom write for the other person and your readers wouldn't notice, or are there still differences where someone could go, Jenny actually wrote this, or Bob actually wrote this?
I think our voices are really distinct, don't you?
I think so. I think that people can tell a difference. Like when I wrote Shane and the Hit Woman, it's very different from Agnes and the Hitman because it's missing Jenny's touch on it. And so the character Phoebe, Jenny wouldn't write Phoebe the way she wrote it. Phoebe is very manlike. She's very she's a hit woman. So
She's
there's not very much sensitivity in it. One thing I love that Jenny does is what I call banter. I love her banter scenes where characters, everybody's just talking. She does dialogue really good. I'm not big on dialogue. You just do what you need to do. We have helped each other a lot, and I think our styles
Yes.
are closer together.
Yes.
But I couldn't. It wouldn't be the same product.
Sometimes we have to write scenes in the other person's viewpoint. And at that point, I always send it back to him and say, you're going to have to butch this up because, this isn't Vince. This isn't Max. This isn't what.
Right.
But this is the way I want to have happen. So this is, if you agree with this, then put it in your voice. Bob actually has a really formal voice, and I have an extremely informal voice. And so, and I don't think we're ever going to be able to just fake each other. It's
Right.
just not. But actually, on my blog, and I don't remember what the name of the post was, there was a place where I said, okay, Bob wrote this scene in Liz's point of view, and he sent it to me and said, here, make this Liz's. And I put his scene up, and I put the one I rewrote in Liz's voice, so you could see the difference. And it's not that the scene changes that much, it's just the language. And it's really important in this one because we're writing them in both first person. So when you read Liz's scenes, you're reading her thoughts and she's actually talking to you. And when you're reading Vince's scenes, and it's so, I think it's one of the strengths of the partnership that when you move from one to the next, the voice is really different.
Do you think of your own character names for the characters you're writing for? Like, Bob, do you think of the guy characters' names and vice versa?
I think for this, you had Vince, didn't you?
I had Vince in there. I told you could change the name, but you said it was okay.
It worked. For the new series, Max Reddy. That's a real name from somebody I served with. He was a crazy man. It just sounds cool.
Yeah.
Names are important though. Names really have to feel. I will say we disagreed on. I still have a hard time pronouncing it. And
Anemone.
Anemone. I just tripped over that every time I read it. We had a big fight about that, and I surrendered. It's in there, but I just had problems with it.
There's a place in the first chapter where she tells you how to pronounce it.
I think of the C thing. I didn't think of it, and that's just where my brain.
Yeah, the C thing is still pronounced anemone.
Too. There's just things I can't pronounce. My wife makes fun of me, like the Spanish Armada. I always get that wrong. I'm from the Bronx. I can't say it.
It's not Armada?
I get it garbled up all the time.
Oh. Well, I never make fun of you.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right.
I'm a good person.
One comment from the chat is, one of the things I love about the Liz Danger books is how immediately you know whose point of view each chapter is in, and you'd know even if the name wasn't at the top of the chapter.
Oh, hi, Leanne. How you doing? She's from the blog.
Oh,
She's
wonderful.
I think that's true. But we have written each other's characters and scenes with them, and that's kind of interesting sometimes when we kind of get the character because we've read the other person writing the character. I think where it can get dangerous is if Jenny got really upset when I had a minor character in a bar scene do something that I thought was really cool.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And she just went, "No, you can't do that. That makes this character look like an idiot." And I'm like, I thought it was pretty cool. I violated the character, and that's one thing we accept. If one person says, "No, you're violating my character," that's it. You can't do that.
She was a very sophisticated architect, and she just went bananas in this bar and started beating people up. And I went, "What the hell?"
Yeah, that's it.
Well, we've come a long way.
But you have this rule that you won't violate each other's characters.
Absolutely.
Do you have any other rules like that?
That's the big one. Whatever he wants for Vince, he gets. He knows Vince's character.
I think we fight about things and we fight about them, and what ends up happening is one of us finally accepts, I think the other person really means this. And I don't care as much about it as the other person does. So they're more right than I am.
There are a lot of, this is not a hill I'm going to die on.
Yeah, we say that a lot.
When we discuss it heatedly, we have to explain it to each other. And I think that helps tremendously.
When you explain it, you can realize, oh, wait, maybe I'm wrong.
Wait,
and I think we're better at that than we were when we first collaborated. I think I listen a lot more to the explanation before my immediate reaction. No, that's stupid. I'm not going to do that. I go, wait a second. And eventually, as we explain it, we both sort of come to an understanding.
And a lot of times we move closer together. I was telling them before we started about the Russian. Yeah. I moved the Russian and you said no, and here's why. You were very kind and explained exactly why I was being an idiot. And at the end, I thought, he's right. Damn it. And I moved it, but moved it back. But I was thinking in the beginning, we had, we had a little more problems. And I remember when the first time we were writing a sex scene,
I don't do
which
those.
Bob refused to do.
Yeah, he just
He said,
said I don't
"Oh,
do those.
Yucky emotional crap.
I
We
don't
call
do
it
that."
yuck.
That's not true. He wrote one in Rocky Start.
I remember.
No, but I said, okay, I'll write it. And I said, okay, now I need to know what your guy is wearing. And he said, I don't know what I'm wearing. He can wear anything you want. And I said, no, clothes are character. So it was hysterical. I mean, the guy had a garrote in his belt and a knife on his, and I'm going through this laughing. Pretty sure my girl is also hysterical as she's peeling these clothes off and finding all these weapons. Finally said, this was the very first book we wrote. I finally said, he's not really helping. He's not enthusiastic here at all. What's wrong with him? And Bob said, well, they're about to go on a mission, and we never thought about sex before a mission. And I said, then why is he getting naked with my girl? And he said, I will never forget this. Well, he knows she needs it, so he's going to take one for the team.
Works for me.
No, you're smarter than that now. You would never.
Take
I
one
swear
for
to God,
the team.
I almost went to Savannah and
This is
but
wonderful.
that's how bad it was in the beginning. Now we sit down and talk, and it's fine. We haven't had another moment like that, but
I think back to like the dynamic that's happening here. I think back to the sessions that I have with my current Dungeons and Dragons team, and I bring up that for a reason of storytelling because anything that the characters do, it's always a conversation and a balance between the game master or the person who's like orchestrating this narrative and then the player characters who get quite a bit of autonomy with their characters, but there are consequences there within. And so when characters make choices, it really kind of impacts how other people perceive it. Be like, he wouldn't do that. Like, why are you doing that? He wouldn't do that. And you're sitting having these conversations with 5 other people, all at a singular table. And now that my current session has hit about, I don't know, we've hit about 9 or 10 sessions, we've started to really dive into the characters and really get a nice feel for things. So it's amazing to me in storytelling when you get a lot of different personalities that how much conflict there is at the beginning. And then you start to go, okay, I see how this works together. And then it starts to become a much more of a mesh versus a battle.
and it's so much easier too because you really do. It took us a while to get through Liz, but once the first one, Lavender, but then the second two went like the wind, and it takes me forever to write anything. And I kept looking back, going, "Why did we do that so fast?" Because we did all the setup in Lavender. We didn't have to reinvent anything, and that makes it so much easier. Somebody on the feed here just said, "Oh my God, I just realized the stuffed bear behind Bob is the same as the tiny Vince bear in the new trilogy." So that's
Jenny
what
said that to me. Yeah, that's Vince Bear.
So
that's the Vince bear.
for anyone who hasn't read the new trilogy, tell us about the bear.
Oh,
Vince Bear, you tell her. We've got Vince Bear. We got Big Red Bear. We had a big fight about Big Red Bear.
we had a big fight about it. And no, the big red bear is not in my room. The big red bear is 6 foot tall, and I'm living in a fairly small place. Um, there's a mother in the story that has developed a thing about bears, and she has almost 400 of them. It's Liz's mother, and she has to do something with the bears. And then there's a scene later on where her mother gives her one and says, "This is a Vince bear. It looks like Vince." So that's why I sent him that one. It's actually a Vermont teddy bear. It's discontinued. Hold on to that. It's rare and precious.
Is that have those little sunglasses on it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's cool.
Yeah, he's cool.
He's got a tattoo too.
My mom.
What?
It's got a heart that says mom.
He's got like a little white T-shirt and black pants, and he's a cool looking bear. Oh, it says love.
Oh,
It's
it
a
says,
little
I thought
tattoo.
it said mom.
What in the book says mom?
Oh,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Well, it should say love because I based it on that bear, but
Yeah.
details.
Right.
One thing that we were seeing as part of our research was that you, Jenny, Bob, and Jen Talty began Cool Guest Publishing at first to reissue your backlist, but then you
That's
created
Bob.
Write It
Yeah,
For.
that's Bob. That's not me.
Oh, okay, sorry. And that you created Write It Forward, which helps writers become hybrid writers. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works?
When indie publishing started back in 2010, 11, I had the rights back to a lot of my backlists. So I just started that company to get those books out. That went for a couple of years. And then business wise, it made no sense to do other people. And I just went off on my own. So that whole phase, I don't know, that's 8 years gone. I've been doing that. Working by myself until Jenny and I started working together.
So
And I said help, and he rushed in and saved the book.
Aw.
I love that you put it that way. That's
Well, it's what
wonderful.
happened. I've been trying to finish that book for well over 10 years. And we talked in email just in general. And I said, okay, I can't get to the end of this. I've got so many words and I can't get to the end. And he said, well, send it to me. And I did, and waited for him to come back and say, you cannot plot for. And instead, he came back with some really good things. And I thought, Vince is his guy.
Yeah.
He's ex-military. He can make it. I said, Bob, just off the top of my head, would you please write Vince and help me get to the end of this book? And he was, even after I said, it's going to be 3 books, you're going to have to write 3 books with me. He said, yeah, we can do that. So he saved me. It's that Green Beret thing.
Bob, do you find that, like, how do I put this? You have military experience and you use that in your books. Do you find that, like, because technology is constantly changing and other policies, and maybe policy is not the right word, but maybe other things change over time in the military, do you find yourself having to go back and, like, read, like, how it is done now, maybe, or things like that? Do you have to keep up on certain things to keep
No,
writing
I'm
about
not.
it?
I'm not a technology guy or a whiz bang or what's the latest gadget or gizmo and all that. Um, to me, it's more about the mindset.
Okay.
And special forces, we had a very unique mindset, and that hasn't changed. We were very different from the rest of the army, so I try to bring that across. Vince actually is not special forces; he's a ranger,
Okay.
and we used to always joke that the N in ranger stands for knowledge. Um, so I had Rangers come to my team, my special forces team from the Ranger Battalion, best light infantry in the world, but yeah, better than SEALs, which might get me in trouble. But
Oh,
um, yeah, so I just tried to get his straightforward mentality, but that was tempered by a constant swirl of deployments. Um, so I'm not concerned about the technology or the gadgets or the guns or the
Okay.
airplanes or any of that stuff. I just want him to have the right mindset.
Okay. Interesting.
I think that's one of the things that makes his guys so compelling. Well, it's, first of all, they have just excellent values. They're ordinary men, but they're honest and they're hardworking and they believe in the truth. And, you just want to be with them. They're just good guys. And then when you get into the stuff that I can't do, like guns, Bob does know what he's talking about. When
Sure.
I kill somebody, they fall off of something high because, I don't get into it. But Bob will say, oh, yeah, that was a Glock, whatever.
Well, a lot of it we do write from personal experience. I mean, I'm
Sure.
noticing my thing in the back, the crest there and the team in the picture. And in Lavender's Blue, I have a character, Dave, and my team sergeant's name was Dave. And a similar thing happened to him that happens to Dave in the story. So I think there's a part of me that wants to get those stories out there about how some of these guys have been affected by things.
Sure. Yeah. Someone
I
in the.
think.
Oh, go ahead, Trey.
No, go ahead.
So I'll just real quick. Someone in the chat said gravity is a great killer.
I've always thought so.
It's not the jump that kills you, it's the landing when you
Right.
parachute. The jump's fine, but it's when you hit the ground.
Right.
For consequence, the fall's gonna kill you.
What were you gonna ask, Trey?
I need to compose myself first.
Okay, so I have a question. Yeah, it's a sudden stop at the end. How do you like? You have a lot of output with the books. You all the writing and like Jenny, you said you have a lot of unfinished material. Like that's a lot of output. How do you fuel yourself to be able to create output? Like, do you read other books? Do you other than the movie you read?
It's not like that. If I could quit writing, I would. It's really hard. She whined. But after every book, except for the ones I write with Bob because he won't let me quit. After every book, there's always that moment of I won't have to do this again. But then you get this idea, and God knows where they come from. And all of a sudden, these people are talking in your head, and you have to get them out of there. So that's why I don't write in chronological order. I just write down whatever the people in my head are saying at the moment. And eventually I look at it and go, I think this is a story. This might be a novel. And then you're stuck. And of course I have a total mess. And that's when I go to Bob and say, I don't really have a plot. And he sends back a one-word email that says, sigh.
I don't really have a plot. Those seem like dangerous words.
Well, like I said, I have 10 books I haven't finished because I don't have a plot. But oh my God, they're wonderful.
Tom Blomquist, when we had him on the podcast, said something similar of like just characters talking in his head and just had to get them out. Whether he had the full story or not, just had to get it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Writers can't not write. So what about you, Bob? Do you fuel yourself somehow? Your mental...
I write what interests me. If I'd been really career oriented, I would have continued writing military thrillers forever. And, early in my career, they're like, oh, the next Tom Clancy. And I was like, I don't want to be, the next Tom Clancy. I don't want to, I got a little tired of writing them. I wanted to do something different. I think it's interesting. One thing I've noticed is writers don't retire. Very few writers hang up their spurs. Comic writers retire. If you think about it, Far Side, they retire. And I've been thinking about it. And I realized because they have to do an idea every day. We have to do a story. There's a lot of stories out there. Ideas are really hard. I think that's stressful. But no, I just love to. I can't consider. I don't even think I'd ever want to retire. I mean, especially when you get in the flow. But it is. It's
hold on to that thought because I'm not writing without you again. It's so much fun because, first of all, I know it's hard to believe, but we never talk. This is the first time I've heard his voice, like I said, in years. We do it all in emails. So we're zapping these emails back and forth. And we got this great program that actually takes our emails and puts it so it looks like it's a chat.
Oh, nice.
So we can go really fast back and forth. And we're both very fast typers.
The chat for Lavender's Blue was 600,000 words. When I pulled all the emails out. I mean, that's other stuff, but it's the back and forth.
Of those were sigh.
Yeah. But a lot of it too was this character, that character. Yes, someone asked they should be published. We're considering that. I mean, we edit it down, of course, but we have been thinking about that. We have them in the document. I mean, that took me like 3 days to pull them all out of the program and put them into a Word document. It was huge.
Wow.
There's a lot of fluff in there, but there's also a lot of really good discussions about it. There's a lot of plot lines that didn't happen.
What we're doing and
didn't happen. I mean, the final version of a book is very different from the original version of the book.
Someone asked 600,000 words with or without zombies?
Ice Pirate Zombies. A lot of discussion about Ice Pirate Zombies. Reanimated Big Red Bear.
He had a lot of. And the reanimated bear, people are asking.
Thinking about writing those scenes to do once One in Vermilion's out. To do the reanimated Big Red Bear version. We'll change it.
That's yours. Somebody on here said, which one of you is the diner aficionado? And that's me. Do you
Ooh,
even go to diners?
Nah,
Nah,
I don't go out.
I love diners.
all right, Jenny, you're going to the best diner that's out there. You're going to your favorite diner. What's your order?
This is my first time.
No, you've been to this diner.
Oh, okay.
This is your regular spot. This is your favorite spot to go. What's your order?
It depends. If I'm depressed, it'll be something with gravy and mashed potatoes. If I'm celebrating, it's going to be a classic burger.
Very nice.
It just depends. If I go to a diner that often, I know their entire menu, so I know which one to go. There was a great diner in the place that I just moved from, and they had eggs Benedict.
Ooh.
I mean, when you really need a charge, you go in and get eggs Benedict. It was so good. It was a great diner in Newton, New Jersey. The Hampton Diner. You should go there and have the eggs Benedict. And I'd send Bob pictures. Oh, yeah, food, yeah. And then he sends me pictures of guns, and I go, oh, that's nice.
We have our passions.
I put a pink gun in vermilion, and I actually sent him a picture of it. Said, okay, I found this on the internet. This is Anemone's gun. And he wrote back and said, no, it's not. And went out and found his own pink gun. So he's the gun guy. I'm not going to fight.
Like, if you have any diner recommendations that sells incredible either pecan pie or chocolate cream pie, let me know.
Sorry.
Oh,
Don't get me.
no. Okay. I will persevere.
Deborah on Facebook said, I've seen the outtakes from the chats and they're pretty hysterical. And Jenny does the best food porn.
We should note that Deb's a good friend of mine. So she's not just a rando out there. She actually knows me pretty well.
Yeah, we want to see some of these outtakes from the chats now, but that's
they're on the
between you
blog.
two.
They're on the blog.
Okay.
Every now and then I put up a post that says state of the collaboration. And we just reproduce the chat from the.
That's fun.
Oh.
I just want them to understand what it's like working with Bob. Because he's great at plotting and he's a really terrific collaborator. But every now and then he goes off on these, like he knows it drives me crazy when he says, we got to put zombies in this book. No, we don't.
I'm not just a rando, Deborah said.
Yes.
I'm Jenny's rando. That's
sure,
funny.
baby.
I love that.
No, but I think it helps to see how we work as friends.
Mm-hmm.
I think that clears up a lot of things because we do give each other a lot of crap, but it's always fun. It's like it's like banter in a book. You don't want to say something insulting and you don't want to shut the conversation down. You're just batting it back and forth like a ping pong ball. And I think it's also a way for us to relax, to take it, because there are times when we're working, both of us, and it's just so intense. And then Bob brings up zombies, and I think, oh, here we go.
Zoe on Facebook said, I know that Jenny often finds concrete props that she writes from, like Vince the Bear. Does Bob also like having props?
Not really. I mean, a lot of things I write about I've experienced. Like Vince has a gladiator. I have a gladiator. I'm going to go in a couple of weeks out west, and I live out of the back of it. The only time I go to Civilization is to get gas.
Gladiator.
I do make my field mocha, fire up the old stove in the back, put some hot chocolate in with some instant coffee. But no, I don't need the tangible things. Like Jenny said, those are the details which I lack, and she fills in. I can see the big picture of the book in my head.
Thank God,
because I focus on. And what I do now is, for details, I keep looking back on what was written previously and try to draw something out of what we subconsciously put into the story to use it again.
I do send him pictures of the stuff I'm using, and I think he looks at them, but he's never really.
I look at some of them. I think we each have a vision in our heads, and sometimes we get pretty close on it. it does help to both have the same vision of who the characters are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good focus. It keeps it.
We negotiate on a lot of it too. I mean, if I put something in and he goes, "No, that's not quite right," we go back and forth. But basically, I'm visual and he's tactical.
So, if someone wanted to get into doing what you do, writing, even as a duo, he's shaking his head already. He's like, no.
Let's start with the
Both of
collaborator.
you are shaking your heads.
The problem
Like,
is
don't
people
ask this question.
I know collaborations that have collapsed because they said, "I know what'll happen. I'll do all the research and you'll do all the writing," which sounds like a fair division. I actually know a collaboration that crashed because of this,
Okay.
because eventually the writer woke up and said, "Why am I doing 9/10 of the work?" Because it's the writing. I know another one that collapsed because half of the writing duo kept saying, "No, you can't do that. And your guy is going to do this."
Oh.
And the person writing the guy said, "You're emasculating my character." And she said, "I don't care. This is the way this is going to go." And that one collapsed on itself too. I think a lot of what works for Bob, and maybe besides a lot of history, I do my girl, he does his guy. We respect that. There's a definite boundary there. He says no, he would not do that. He's not going to do that. I back off. And the same thing with my girl. And because of that, the two most important characters to us in the book are safe. We know nothing's going to, we're not going to be forced to do anything. And then we negotiate everything. And actually, the negotiations are pretty interesting because we have to talk about plot and why things happen. And when we're doing that, a lot of new stuff comes up. So the working back and forth actually makes the book better.
Yeah.
And then we rewrite, we go back and say, okay, this part is moving slow, and we talk about what. So it's actually fun. It's like playing a game. And the really great stuff is I only write half a book because I'll be writing along and Bob say, "Okay, here's my next scene." And I'll go, "Oh, this is cool." And I didn't have to write it. This is so cool.
Well, I love that you found this way to collaborate that works in a magical way that obviously readers everywhere are affected in a positive way from it by it, and also like it makes sense. Everybody's like, yeah, I love that it exists in the way it exists, and it works for both of you. It works for everybody, and
Yeah.
so you've got this dream team thing happening, and I think that's fabulous.
Well, not for everybody, because there's always somebody who comes in and says, "I don't understand why he's writing with this woman." But there's always somebody who
There's
comes up with that.
you can't make everybody happy, but as
But
far as oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I think a lot of it is just the fact that we both have had success in solo careers.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not trying to prove anything anymore. I got the career stuff out of my system a long time ago. And so now we just get together and say, okay, what's really cool about this book? And this is going to be so great. I love the one we're writing right now. We've just got the first one in the trilogy, the truck draft done. And it's so different and it's so off the wall, and it's just like anything can happen in this book. I'm having the best time with it, and we're going to write 2 more set with these characters in this, and that's just so much fun. I'm really excited.
And see, that's what I love, like doing episodes like this, and when you're both clearly passionate about that work. Um, the
That's
tremendous reaction for Bob, and the elation from Jenny. But it's clear it's so clear how much passion and how much energy you have, and then to also look over at our chat feed over here and see how many people are commenting and tuning in and loving your works as well. I think it speaks volumes of how much you've accomplished.
Well, actually, I'm so, like I said, Deb's one of my best friends, and Marcy Smith, who's in there, that's my niece. I think you got to realize I rallied the troops before
You did. Look at that. That's
You
awesome.
did.
I love that you're being supported.
Hi, Maria.
So Debbie asked, what is you've collaborated with other authors, and Bob has too. Maybe Bob has too. I think it was
I don't know. Have you?
Yeah.
You never
This is
cheated
it.
on me.
Okay.
That's great. Um, I collaborated with other romance authors,
Okay.
and they were female. And we did the same thing. We each put our own characters in there. That we had like three sisters or three friends or whatever. And that was fun. It was a lot of fun writing with other romance writers because there were a lot of things we could shorthand. But with Bob, he knows stuff I don't know.
Sure.
And he can do stuff that I can't do in the story. And he comes up with things that I would never have thought of. And when you're writing with, other romance writers, and I loved all the writers I wrote with, they were all great, but they were me. We all came from the same tradition. We were all writing the same genre. And, Bob comes in and starts shooting people. I'm going, oh, that's new. I don't know. It was just exciting with
Right.
Bob.
Well,
And it
bringing
still is.
a whole nother flavor and element to that game.
And it's in my book. I mean, I'm writing Liz Danger, and then all of a sudden Vince shows up and he's fantastic. And he's doing stuff I would never have dreamed of. And it's just like I wrote the first chapter of Liz a long time ago where he picks her up for speeding. And it was okay. And Bob rewrote it, and he stops her for speeding and then tells her her back wheel is wobbling because the lug nuts have fallen off. And he gets lug nuts out of the car and goes back and fixes her wheel. That's genius. I would never have thought of that. That's just brilliant on so many levels. So that's the kind of thing where I liked the first scene, but once he got his hands on it, it was great.
And it's that like other perspective of things. I think I've sent a couple of things to Emily before, just like ideas for things or like concepts of like a project that I'm working on. And anytime I get like a returned response from it, I'm like, oh, I like this. How do we make this happen? How do I do this? Oh, I don't have time. But it's getting that other perspective of something to make you realize, how can I make this better? And it 9 times out of 10 with especially with Emily, it is better.
Oh, thank you.
Definitely. It's definitely better with Bob. Even with
Aw.
the freaking zombies. I actually offered to write a zombie book with him, and he said, no, I don't. He just wants to use it to torture me.
Would you agree with that, Bob?
Yeah, I think they're the stupidest things ever. It makes no sense to me. So I'm just messing with her.
Well, Bob, I do have a question. Oh, sorry, Jenny.
No, go ahead.
Bob, I do have a question for you. Since we mentioned Jane Austen earlier, have you ever read Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies?
No.
Oh,
I
darn.
mean,
It's a movie
I
too.
read Pride and Prejudice.
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies is a trip.
Mhm.
I would imagine.
Yeah, it lives up to its name.
We're not going to write that.
No, don't do that,
Don't.
please.
Don't.
Right. So back to my question, which was, if someone was getting started writing and they wanted to
Oh, yeah.
maybe write a book for publishing or just to write, do you have any advice or anything you would say to someone just starting out?
Well, first of all, you have to know why you're writing a book. If the voices are in your head, if this story is so compelling, if you have to get it on the page, then just sit down and write it because that's what you've got to do. But a lot of people start off by asking, well, how do I get an agent? How much money do you get first? And it's like, honey, that is so far down the road.
Yeah.
Finish the book. You can sell a finished book a lot faster than you can sell an idea anyway in the beginning. But just the people who want the book signings don't want book signings. Book signings are awful.
Oh, really?
The people who want book signings and the fame and money I get, but you've got to really need to tell this story, even if it's the only story you ever tell. And if you don't start with that, I think you're screwed into the get-go. Robert, would you like to?
Yeah, I agree. I think too many people think about publishing. That's not the issue. It's a story. You
Yeah.
got to tell it. If you're thinking about publishing, you're starting in the wrong direction. It's the same thing we used to say, do you want to wear a green beret? Or do you want to be a green beret? It's two totally separate
Mhm.
issues.
Yeah,
You know, tell the story. The rest will come after that, but don't put the business end.
maybe.
Forget about that. Push. Don't even think about that.
Yeah, Jenny told us before the show started that 84% of people say, I'm going to write a book someday, or something like that. Was that it? And
Yeah, something like that.
so, yeah. And then that's part of why I asked, too, because so many people have had some interest in doing such a thing and maybe never get it off the ground. So, this is some
Well, the
sage
other thing you have
advice.
to remember is that writing is not publishing.
Yes, correct.
You can
Totally.
write wonderful, wonderful books, and publishing just means make it public. And one of the great things about being a writer right now is indie publishing, because you can publish it without a publisher.
Right.
You don't need the gatekeeper. You won't get the promotion and the widespread attention, but it's it's just an incredibly free time. We self-publish these novels, and I can't believe what a difference it's made. I mean, I'm not throwing up, at publication time anymore. Stress is, so much of the stress is gone. Bob's not going to make me do a book tour. Um, and I should say at this point, my publisher, St. Martin's Press, always treated me like a queen. They were wonderful. I'm not complaining about that. It's just publishing at a game is insane, absolutely insane. The saying about it is that publishing isn't a business, it's a casino. Because every time you put a book out there, you're rolling the dice and you have no idea what's going to happen. And let me tell you, that's not good for you as a writer, because you start second guessing yourself. And then if you write, say, 6 romantic comedies, they expect your 7th one to be a romantic comedy too. And maybe you just wanted to write a ghost story this time. So, there's all that kind of pressure. But when you're self publishing, you can do anything you want as long as your partner knows how to self publish, because I don't. Bob does all the work, he does every bit of the work, and he won't let me help. So when you get to that part in One in Vermilion, where Vince won't let Liz help renovate that's Bob.
But he's doing such an amazing job.
He is doing an amazing job.
Yeah.
And I really don't need any extra work, but I do need him to know how much I appreciate it, because he's spending hours and hours, weeks on it.
Well, I think he knows now.
Mhm.
I've thanked him many times.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
My one question, because Bob has talked about writing in different styles, and you've mentioned like writing 6 books in one style, and then you want to do something different. How can a writer prevent themselves from being landlocked like that or typecast?
Well, that's a
Can't.
catch-22. I remember talking to Sue Grafton about that, and she was just so frustrated writing to Kinsey Mahone over and over and over again, and how irate her fans would get if she changed anything about
Yeah.
Kinsey. Give her a different haircut, people would go bonkers. And that's the nice thing about indie publishing. We can write anything we want. We have no publisher looking at us going, we want another, Liz Danger. We want another Agnes and the Hitman. It's like, nah, let's do this.
Yeah,
And I
we
know
ran into that when we did shop Liz around first.
Mhm.
And, people would say, no, we don't want a collaboration. I have another book that's finished that hasn't been published. It got turned down because it was a supernatural. Nobody wants a supernatural from Jennifer Crusie. So part of that, that's like Bob said, it's a catch-22. On the one hand, once you've got a brand as she's great at romantic comedy, people will buy you for romantic comedy. But when you get to the point where you're just not feeling funny and you want to write a ghost story, then they turn on you. So it's the whole branding thing is a double-edged sword. But if you want to make a ton of money, write romantic comedy. It's very popular.
A couple of things from the chat. Mac on YouTube says, just so you know, CBs are following the chat, and we are so excited that the two of you are writing together again.
CBs are the cherry bombs. They were our fan group back when we first started writing.
Awesome.
We had we had a blog called He Wrote, She Wrote, and we would fight on the blog, and they, pitch in, and they were wonderful. I mean, we'd get like 300 comments because they'd all be talking among themselves. They named themselves after our logo, which the cherry
Okay.
bombs.
Yeah.
But they're great. They've been with us a long time. So it's very nice to see you again, McBee.
And then Zoe on Facebook said, Jenny, I know you've had several other books you've started. Have you ever considered inviting Bob in on those books too? Or
Oh, hell yes. I send them to him and he goes, and sends them back.
Well, Jenny doesn't know this. This is the first time she's finding it out, but I've been rewriting Arresting Anna.
Really?
Yeah, I've gone through it all, the entire thing. I have a plot. I think it could be a really good novella.
I love that book.
But it's really going, if we do it, it's going to be so over the top, not based in reality, but it's funny. I mean, that's why I got into Lavender. I really like the character. And Arresting Anna, I love it's just hilarious.
It was pretty over the top when I sent it to you. She shot somebody in a garage.
Yeah, and that's all there. And now I have a plot. It's got a loop in, but it's not going to be an entire novel, I don't think, but it can be a really good novella.
That's part of a 3-book series, and I have the other 2 started. And I sent them to you. You weren't real enthusiastic, but I'm sure we can work something out. I would love to get those books out.
Well, at least I don't know did you write the other 2?
I started them. One of them was Stealing Nadine, and the other one was Haunting Alice.
I don't know anything about those. So, but Arresting Anna, I already know the ending. So.
Oh, that's good because I didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
Well, this
is so exciting.
This is amazing. Yeah. And the chat's going a little nuts about it too. I can't keep up. Let's see.
There's Zoe. Hi, Zoe.
Yeah, it's and then Maria on Facebook said your last ghost story was one of your best books. It's one of my favorites.
I always thought it was. It was my version of The Turn of the Screw. I thought it was brilliant.
And she said, "Please finish all your please finish all your books." Well, maybe that's something for the supernatural one too.
He's not big on supernatural.
Oh, okay. No.
I did send him Nita, which is the one. It's The Devil in Nita Dodd, and it's finished. And I sent it to him and said, "People say this has really bad problems." And he looked at it and said, "Yeah, this has problems." And I thought,
and totally different genre. That's a whole different genre and ball game. It would require a different kind of work. Yeah.
Sure. Well, everybody's saying it was brilliant. Your ghost story.
Well, a lot of the people from the blog have also read large chunks of Nita because I work out chapters or scenes on there. So I'll put up a scene. They've read a ton of. I think they've read all of Arresting Anna, the stuff I sent you, and they give me great feedback. They're very honest.
That's very nice. What a cool relationship to have with your audience.
Yeah, I don't actually think of them as audiences or fans or anything. They're really friends. We've been together a long time.
Wonderful. I love that even more.
Oh, there's Deb on there. Do it, Bob. Yes.
Do it, Bob.
It has been spoken by Deborah, so it shall be.
She's very forceful. She's also a witch, so don't mess with her.
How do you sift through a lot of the conflicting opinions with your friends on the blog?
A lot of it is just natural reaction. You look at something and think, "Oh, that's brilliant," or "No, that's not my book." Bob?
I gotcha.
Actually, he hates it when I ask for opinions.
Yeah, I don't take too much beta reader opinion. If they all agree, I told Jenny the other day, she could read 100 reviews, 99 are positive, but that one negative one or the one that's the one she focuses on. I think that could be irritating.
That's where a flaw might be. It's not that I'm sitting there going, "Oh my God, it's all over." It's like, okay, what tripped this reader? And sometimes, you read the things on Amazon and somebody says, "Well, the language in this was just upsetting." And you think, "Yeah, you're not my reader," and move right on. But there have been times they've said things that I thought, "Ooh, that was not good.
Well, and it's interesting because, and I've heard people talk about this too, because you can post something on social media, or you can, put something out there and you get 200 comments that are like, way to go, this is awesome, go you. And then you get one that's like, why did you use red? Or why did you do it this way? And, or yeah, no, I hate it. And then that's the one comment you're going to hyper focus on because it wasn't what the other people were saying. And that can be a little toxic for you to hyper focus on that. And so,
But those are two different comments you just said. Like, why did you use red? I should be able to explain that.
yeah, I guess I meant
I
it
hate
in a
it is
negative way.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know who you are and I wouldn't have lunch with you. I don't care what you say.
Good. Okay. Good for you.
It's how do I phrase this? In my corporate job, we have an opportunity for like our end users to do a lot of surveys back to us, and so we also get star ratings and reviews. And I cannot tell you how many people have left things like, "Oh, this sucks. This is terrible," and that's all that they say. And what I have had to vocalize to some of these individuals leaving comments is leave me actionable feedback. Don't just tell me it sucked. Tell me why. Why did it? What about it did you take issue with so that I can maybe work on that for the next thing and make an improvement on that? Your opinion matters to me. So why not help me by informing me about what was impactful to your experience?
A lot of times, the people who leave those comments, though, don't know.
One thing
You
that's
know,
been really nice is we had no clue how readers would react to these books.
Yeah.
And we were really pleased, I think, and we still are.
Stunned.
By the
Absolutely
reviews.
stunned. Yeah.
I mean, it's exceeded my expectations, the reaction from readers.
Now I'm terrified because Vermilion comes out tomorrow, and I'm thinking, what if they don't like it? We did two good ones, and they're going to hate the third one. Oh
Too
my
late.
God!
I don't know.
So,
We
yes.
have
That's
someone.
very comforting, Bob.
We have someone
No,
in Australia that's still reading it, so it can't be too bad. I'm sure it's going to be amazing.
Well, that's right. She got it early. Well, we have some there are some people in this chat who were copy editing and beta readers, but they don't tend to tell us we suck. They're kind of friends.
Right. Right.
It's not until the great naked unwashed publisher comes out. Posting on Goodreads and Amazon.
Maria, who is currently reading it, said no, Vermilion is brilliant.
Yes, Maria is also a friend. You got to realize I really salted the crowd here.
I love it, though.
Well, this is now our opportunity to start a GoFundMe to send Jenny and Bob to the same diner in the same town to have a nice meal together.
No, you don't understand. As Bob said once, we should never be in the same zip code. It's best we just type.
Okay. Well, then we'll set up like a Zoom call where you're both at a diner and you're both in
There
my separate
we
states.
go. Yes,
That's
can do that.
hilarious.
Do you go to diners, Bob?
He
Bob
doesn't
could be
leave the
eating
house,
at his
remember?
desk. Bob will be eating at his desk, and I will be in a diner.
Okay. We'll just cater for Bob, and
Yeah.
then we'll get you to a
There
diner.
you go.
Jenny, Bob, this has been an incredible time talking to you both. It is so clear that you're passionate about the work that you do and that you can riff on each other very easily, but it's all in such good fun, and it shows how much you both are truly friends. And thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks.
Oh, this was fun. Yeah, this is
Interesting.
great. Yeah, we learned a lot of new stuff. Like, you're going to finish arresting Anna.
Yeah. That was
Excellent.
a wonderful thing to drop in this episode.
That's wonderful.
I guess you guys have a lot to talk about then.
By the way, I still haven't finished You Again.
I can fix that too.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Big things to look forward to for everyone. And also, everybody should go check out the book that drops tomorrow in the US and perhaps most of the rest of the world. I don't know. One in Vermilion. This is the Liz Danger book number 3.
Yep.
And please love it, please, because
Please love it.
I'm a heart patient. I really can't take much more.
Of all
So
the
is-
reasons.
Hey, guilt is a good motivator.
But
Bob's a heart patient too.
go give it a positive review on Amazon and Goodreads and everywhere else.
Because
Please.
Thanks.
Jenny's so pathetic, just
Do
such
it.
a
Do it
person.
because you love both of them.
Mhm.
Or the book. It would be good if you liked the book.
Well, that too, of course. Goodness.
Well, Zoe says she thinks it's stronger than Worse Than Pink. I love you, Zoe.
Ooh.
Ooh. Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as this episode comes to a close here, this episode, along with probably every other podcast, will be dedicated to Joe Capone, our moderator, fellow comedian, passionate encourager, and greatly missed friend. You can find us pretty much wherever you tune into podcasts. For updates, announcements, and more, please follow us on social media under Modern Romantic. Thank you, everybody, and go have a giant 6-foot-tall red bear day.
Thank you,
You can get that.
everyone. We'll have this episode available on Spotify and the other podcast outlets, as well as the video available on YouTube for you to watch again in a couple of weeks. Thanks for coming, everybody. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.